The following is a production of the University of Minnesota.
So we are here today to discuss career options beyond the academy in the United States. And Minneapolis, with its many companies, non-for-profits, government agencies, and a vibrant arts and theater scene, provides a perfect backdrop for this discussion. We have a diverse group of experts, of panelists from Minneapolis-based companies, academic and non-academic institutions. Thank you all for coming again, who will engage in a discussion with all of you. And I'm curious to hear about the perspectives from local employers. What are the skills and qualifications they're looking for in our graduates? Are there early opportunities for graduate students to connect with future employers through research or project-based internships or research collaborations?
I want to emphasize the plural here, career paths. It's very important that our conversations don't inappropriately narrow the range of options that graduate students consider, either before they arrive for their studies or once they're embarked. Many of you are interested in academia and anticipate continuing on that path for your career. Many aspire to work outside the academy, perhaps in the private sector, at a nonprofit, or within the government. Careers outside, and this is important to emphasize, inside the academy have changed quite a bit over the past decade. These careers are different than they used to be, and we need to look at that honestly. One thing remains clear. Earning a graduate degree prepares you for many more of these career opportunities, both inside and outside. The report from the Commission on Pathways Through Graduate School and into Careers notes that by 2020, just 5 years from now, there'll be a projected increase of about 22% in jobs requiring a master's degree and an increase of about 20% for jobs requiring a doctorate or professional degree.
Graduate education is a public value as well. Time and time again, we can document that communities themselves are fundamentally changed when you have a workforce and a cadre of well-educated citizens living and working in the community, partly because they volunteer, partly because they vote. But you know, one of the most interesting things to me was a Texas study that showed when the proportion of graduate-prepared employees grew in a community, the salaries of low-wage workers also rose. But what do we know empirically about not just the first jobs of graduate students, but of career pathways? You know, truly, I am a social scientist, and even if I weren't, my candid response would be not much, and certainly not enough. What skills, perspectives, and habits of mind have you really developed as a process of graduate school? Not what content have you mastered, not even what specific technique or method of inquiry, but what, and again, I would encourage you to think about the term habits of mind. What is it about your approach, your way of thinking that goes with you? And you remember that careers and life are not nearly as linear as we either think they are or we believe them to be. Resist the idea that the choices you make today or at your first job are binaries. You are not making a choice between academic and non-academic. The lines are blurring for a whole host of reasons we could talk about. If you think about it in that context, that you will move back and forth across sectors and career pathways, somehow sort of this imminence and finality of the decisions you make as you launch your first career, I think, are less profound.
What's important to think about is, when you think about your own network, it's not just who do they know, what they, that person that you know, but who do they know? And it's really worthwhile asking the question, well, who else should I talk to? Or would you be able to make an introduction for me? because that could lead to some wonderful things. I know that it did for me. Is the skill that I develop in clearly defining problems and defining the right problems was vastly improved by the work that I had to do when I was, completing my doctorate. All right, so what do we look for at Jarrett Mills, right, for people interested in a technical career? Okay, so obviously there's technical expertise. Okay, but here's what we're not looking for. I'm not looking for anything that I can Google, right? I am looking for people that have what I call technical acumen, technical judgment, have the ability to connect the dots. That's the technical approach that you're going to take. That's really important. So it's not about just Googling, technical knowledge. So this whole ability to work in teams and to collaborate, I always tell people is that the magic happens at the intersections. And that probably happens here at the University of Minnesota too.
Yeah.
And here's another one. If you've lived in another country, we're a global company. And so that really helps us in terms of cultural agility and understanding. So those are the kinds of experiences, briefly that we look for.
The main message that I think is important to deliver here, and especially as not only internally to Target, but as I've spent time benchmarking with other industry partners, is right now there is truly no better time to be a graduate student. And I promise you Number one, I think one thing that's important that I've learned over the last couple years is a bit of good news. So I'm not sure if there's anyone in the audience who's feeling a little uneasy because they're not sure whether they want to do industry or if they want to stay in academics. And the good news that I'm here to deliver is, as an employer, we don't expect you to know that. That is truly a great opportunity for something like an internship. So with our PhD and master's students that we bring on board, we fully encourage them to explore that throughout the process. And it truly is a mutually beneficial partnership. So good news that if you're not sure of what you want to do, it is entirely acceptable from an employer's perspective, at least speaking for Target, for you to come in, get an experience like an internship, and then make your decision from that. In our interview process with Target, if you're a PhD student, the first question that I ask is, what conversations have you had with your advisor regarding an industry experience, and what could that bring to your research or dissertation? So know that no matter which way you plan to take your career, that is a worthwhile conversation to have with your advisor early and often. And that would.
When I think about what I did at the university and what helped me to go on and get an internship, you've all heard about problem solving and brainstorming abilities, but it really is the ability to be humble and to be able to listen to other opinions and add to that. And I know that's a pretty obvious collaborative statement, but it really rings true within industry. No one likes to sit in a meeting and talk to someone who sounds as though they are God's gift to this project. You want to be able to collaborate and talk and learn from all of your peers in that meeting. I guess the final thing I wanted to talk about was, I'm not involved in the recruitment process, but as a research and development team, we all interview potential employees just to get a feel. It's very important within our group that we have a good team collaboration, and teamwork is obviously important. And what do we look for? I think the thing I really look for is the willingness to learn. I'll reiterate that. It's the willingness to go beyond what your skill set is. You're in the interview because you have a great CV, because you're doing a degree that's relevant. And I know this is more tailored towards the science and engineering, but what we really want to see is, what can I do? What can I do beyond that? Where do I want to take that? And I think Lloyd just mentioned, research the company, work out what you can do for them, but then think about the extras. What else can you say? Well, you haven't really thought about this in this particular industry. This is something that I'd suggest maybe you could work on. It's a little arrogant, but it works. It's something that people want to see. They want to see you push yourselves and to push them.
Develop your pitch. So this, again, is on the communication side. So find out ways of being explained the long-term goals of your research and what the long-term applications might be. And even if your research is fundamental, you still should be able to do that. And I would not take your department research seminars as a model for how to make that pitch. And then the last one on this list is pick up some management skills. How do you do that? become a teaching assistant. That is a lot of management skills there. Supervise an undergrad, there's management skills there. Volunteer to track your lab, but I would love it if a graduate student said, I would keep track of these budgets for you. Co-write a major proposal or co-write a minor proposal. The graduate school has travel grants. Every one of you should apply for one of those travel grants. It's an opportunity to go some places where you don't, and it just kind of gives you a chance to help hone your pitch, your message in a way that's appealing to a broader audience. And my closing thing will be that certainly from my perspective, I really like it when my students go into industry. I think there's this myth that, oh, we want to grow these little me's, but I'll tell you two main reasons why I like it when my students go into industry. One is it provides a direct connection between me and industry. What's more direct than the students? And the great thing about at the graduate level is that they tend to be moving a little bit higher up. So Michael's a senior scientist. He's not, an entry-level job. So he's got, a certain amount of, I wouldn't say, well, sure, I'll say clout in there, right? So influence, and so that's just a great connection. The second is that you think that the primary form of dissemination is through publications. In reality, from my perspective, that primary form of dissemination of the new knowledge is through the students. And when your students are getting out there and they're being placed in these industries and they're using some of the ideas that they developed on their own or collaboration with you in your lab, that's an exceptionally powerful way to get your ideas out there and being used, be it in a technical company or a nonprofit or in a whole host of non-academic opportunities.
That is quite a leap from working at your local savings and loan to advising students and teaching students about the pre-modern world. One of the ways I got there was to not see what I did for money as shaping what I did for my life. Being curious, and one of the things that brings us all to higher education as graduate students or as faculty members is a sense of curiosity. We want to learn something about a particular topic. It doesn't really matter on a certain level what that topic is. It's the curiosity that helps us develop the habits of mind that Suzanne was talking about, that Provost Hanson was talking about, that provide us with some of those tools that are so applicable not only to specific industries, but also to any other type of position that you might be interested in out in the world. You have a particular interest that led you to the topic of your graduate program. There's a reason you chose that interest. Whether you become a professor or you join a Fortune 500 company or you run a nonprofit or you decide you really want to take that knowledge and change how it's packaged and teach it to fourth graders, you're still using that same desire, that same curiosity that drove you to graduate school in the first place. That one of the things I will simply say is that I've worked in nonprofits, I have been on nonprofit boards, I'm now in library world, which is an entirely different world. There are places, there are internships for you in these worlds, regardless of what your degree program is, because there are tons of transferable skills. And when we get to the Q&A, I would be happy to answer any questions that you have about any of those. Thank you.
By thinking about what I've learned to do in my program rather than what I've been studying, I've been able to start seeing that my training looks different and that it's actually much more compatible with those gazillions of job openings on monster.com and indeed.com that you run across. Rather than understanding my dissertation as evidence that I have extensive and specialized knowledge in 19th century state building and child welfare policy, my dissertation becomes evidence that I have the ability to research in a wide range of sources, including government documents, legislative debates, court documents, and institutional records. My teaching experience becomes less about being able to function in a classroom and more about public speaking skills, facilitating group discussions, and conveying specialized information to non-specialist audiences. As I've started to apply for jobs outside of traditional academic work in the professoriate, I've been doing volunteer work, which comes with its own financial challenges because, again, volunteer means unpaid, and that's unpleasant. But it turns out that doing this work means that that summary, that elevator pitch that everybody has about their dissertation in case that eminent scholar asks you the question, right, that research question about what do you do? And you have 60 to 90 seconds to tell them. Turns out that's exactly what you do when you go to a state legislature and lobby and do grassroots lobbying. You have to be able to convey the bill you want in about 60 to 90 seconds to a person who may or may not actually care that much about it. So you got to be able to do that. So it's really easy to believe that completing a PhD in history and not getting a job teaching history in a college or university was a colossal waste of time. I believed it for a while, and I know lots of people who still do believe it. However, in my experience, that's just not the case. My dissertation topic may only be applicable to a very small number of specialized jobs, with the most obvious fit, again, being faculty in a history department. But the skills I've developed, both as a researcher and a teacher, can be applied to a much larger range of career paths that are better suited to the kind of career and the life that I want to live after I graduate.
One thing I've seen with both alumni and more master's and PhD students is more of them being on LinkedIn, more of them on social media. So from the panel's perspective, have you seen with master's and PhD students any best practices, or maybe folks from this area aren't utilizing it as much?
I think I can start. It makes me think about what Bernadette said initially, and that's just really good networking skills. So LinkedIn is your best friend no matter what you want to do. So that is a great professional platform to use. And oftentimes, if you are looking to get in touch with a certain company or just want a conversation, want to get in touch with a scientist from, any one of our organizations, that's a really great way to reach out. That sometimes can be a little bit more noticeable than email, rise to the top of the stack a little bit more. So in short, I think it's a great tool to use. And if you don't have a LinkedIn profile, you should, even if you're still a student.
Especially if you're not sure what you want to do, LinkedIn actually is an excellent platform to see what sorts of backgrounds the people have who work at the companies or the places you might be interested in. Where did they come from? What are their educational backgrounds? And I think you'd be very surprised at how many of them have higher degrees. But they follow different paths. This also gives you an opportunity to get to know someone a little bit before you ask them for an informational interview or you contact them for information about job openings or anything like that. It can give you some background information. It's a good place to do a little preliminary research.
Opportunities. The problem that myself and many colleagues run into is the opportunity of financial stability throughout the graduate education, and oftentimes having to decide between taking the internship where you can develop networking connections and new skill sets, or being able to pay the rent and being able to eat during the summer months or even during the year, depending on your graduate stipend. I was wondering if there were any recommendations, therefore, for students interested in a non-academic career experience to be able to get that experience but also not have to make dangerous financial decisions.
Well, just speaking from our company standpoint, in terms of the internships, I mean, those are paid internships. Now, there are certainly other opportunities where they're not, but that is something that we certainly offer.
I agree with Bernadette. The good news is that for many, I'm sure every company here, the internship opportunities that we do have are very well compensated. One of our PhDs and oftentimes lead to full-time opportunities. So even students who are in their second or third year, if it is a mutual fit, by your last day, we'll either extend you an offer for when you defend, if successfully so, a full-time offer. And usually the response to that offer is extremely positive. So good news if you do consider industry experience, but I think that is important. And be open to the employer on what you're looking for. So for some of our students, they want a shorter internship or one that's not during the summer. Those are things that we're open to speaking about to make sure that it makes sense for you and your research, and for some, longer. So know that that's usually not a concern, and good news overall to look forward to.
The more that the internship can be connected to your research, then the more possibility you have of having discussion with your advisor that if it can advance the research, you know, that maybe that some amount of funding can come from the project. But, you know, if it's a real deadline-driven grant with certain deliverables, that's going to be a little bit tougher. And then again, I think it's great the comment you said about shorter opportunities, because maybe there's something that's, you know, where you can get that experience in a shorter period of time, but it's less of a hit financially or less of a hit on the grant.
Just speaking entirely from the department I work in at Medtronic, we also offer not just summer internships, and specifically for graduate students. So you can have some leeway in almost bartering for what works for you, because we don't want someone who's there against their own will. We want positive workers. So if it works out better for you to do 1 day a week throughout the term, throughout the semester, and your advisor is willing to let you do that, that's something we'll certainly cater to as well.
And just one of the challenges that I've seen many graduate students coming in with is that their whole PhD career, they've planned to go on into academia, and then the last year of their program, they realize, oh, actually I want to go into industry. And they don't have a summer left necessarily to do an internship. And so they're at a point where they haven't gained industry, experience. So from the industry perspective, I'm curious what advice you'd have for those students. But then also, we're candid about talking about some students might have a challenging time convincing their advisors to give the okay to do an internship over the summer as well. So for those students that maybe are in that case where they know they want to go in industry but are having a hard time, getting industry experience because of other challenges, what advice would you have for them as well?
Supportive. What ways can you be an advocate for yourself as an employer? I have that question. We've made an offer in the past and I've gotten turned down by the advisor. So I'm curious to what that looks like as well.
So here's how to make it a win situation. And sometimes with a internship where it seems a little strange from the point of view of the advisor is that it's just completely distant. The student goes off into this, like black hole of the company, and then, comes back again 6 months later. But I think it could be a much better opportunity if there was some connection made, kind of a three-way connection between the intern supervisor in the company and the advisor and the intern, where there was a project of mutual interest, which may or may not turn into a publication, but something where it could connect to the advisor's broad research portfolio, and then I become invested, because it gives me an opportunity to connect with someone at the company, and maybe later you hit them up with a research proposal. But just to have it be a kind of a three, and that might mean some discussion about the exact placement of that internship, and for a larger company they might have more sort of leeway in terms of where that person goes, but to have it be of sort of a benefit to the advisors of scholarly objectives as well.
Hi, I'm Caitlin Cohen, and I'm a PhD candidate in the College of Design, and I know that I've developed a lot of skills that are probably different from what someone might expect based on what my PhD is in. And so I was wondering if you would recommend developing a skills-based resume or something similar to that for applying for jobs in industry, or even just jobs outside of academia, such as in a library or something like that. Thanks.
I think all CVs on a certain level should emphasize your skills. We don't do that so much in academia, but those CVs that come across my desk for potential interns or for people I hire for grant projects, et cetera, the ones that are a little bit more skills focused tend to be the ones that rise to the top, because it's not a mystery what you think you can do. And part of your job is to convince me that I need you. And that's one of the ways to do that. I mean, and actually, the very best salespeople are those who don't try to sell you a product. They identify what you need, and they tell you how they can fill that need. And so if you can devise a CV, whether you work with two, one for one field and one for another one, or find a way to combine them, that is going to be your first entree into convincing someone that you can fill the need that they have.
registered. And the question is, when students are applying for a position that's not an exact fit for with their experience in graduate school, what can they do to stand out among applicants?
Well, actually, I would say that, we probably don't hire necessarily based on the research that somebody did, but we do look at the broader skills that the person has, because, problems will change, and how a person approaches a problem is much more important than the specific problem at the time. And so the way you can differentiate yourself is by highlighting those areas that go way beyond the specific problem.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of what we think about, especially at a graduate level, is truly that what we think we're going to need in 3 and 5 years from now. And a lot of those questions we don't have answered, even as a large organization. So with not knowing that, what we do know is we need people with skill sets. So research is what gets us interested, but it doesn't always have to be an exact fit. Kind of 3 things that we look beyond that is, first one is technical aptitude, of course. But beyond that, what's really important to target is passion and creativity. So we know that the industry is going to continue to change. The innovation cycle is running 9 times as fast as it was in the past. So anything that we're working on today, we're probably not going to be working on in a few years. So with people, whatever they're studying, who are really passionate, creative, and really interested in what's new, I think is equally as important in what you do.
I recently acquired what I now know are considered skills. You're talking about how to put it in a CV. I don't know how to document my skills. Do you have any advice as where I can go so that I can build my CV and it's written in a way where my skills come out? I didn't know if anybody here would know any resources at the university where I could do that.
I see the Career Center raising up in the back.
If you haven't, I would go noodle around on that versatile PhD website that was mentioned earlier. It's really wonderful. It's a forum, so you can actually ask questions, and they put up pretty high premium on anonymity. So in case you have one of those less than enthusiastic advisors who you don't want to quite disclose that you're looking, that's a great place to start getting some basic information.
Hi, my name is Maggie Kubak, and I'm a career counselor on campus, and I teach a job search preparation for graduate students class. So keep that in mind. It's a great one. I have to say, it's been offered for several years now, and every semester the reviews are fabulous. Students really value getting some really concrete information about the things you're talking about.
And recently I've run across a few appealing jobs that actually don't require a PhD or an advanced degree. It's a BS or a BA requirement. But they do look for, even though they're associate positions, they do look for 2 to 5 years of experience. And I could see spinning some of that experience through my PhD research, but would not having the specific technical experience for a certain position limit you? And if so, how might you recommend going around that or working through it?
There's nothing wrong with trying and exploring, right? And I think it's worth, like I said, earlier, get out of your comfort zone and try new things. And I think it's worth that try. And I would have to say that even for my position, when I started, there was not a requirement for a PhD. There was a master's requirement. But I did get advantage from the skills that I developed as a PhD, student. And then it's about, I'll never forget this. I worked with this one marketer from New York. And so some of you may relate to this, some of you may not, so just put on your New York hat for a minute. And he would tell me, what we really need are people with fire in the belly. And so what he was really seeing is, okay, so it's that person that's going to have that extra initiative that will help us think about things that we never thought of before, taking that leadership. And how can your experience, in getting your doctorate, differentiate you from others? Mm-hmm. And that could be really, very positive.
Yeah, I would agree.
Within our group at Medtronic, it's certainly a PhD will certainly suffice as experience. That's again specifically within R&I, we're looking for those types of people. But oh, absolutely. I mean, just because you don't have those 2 to 4 years doesn't mean you shouldn't be looking at those jobs. And be candid when you apply. Just explain, why you're applying and why you want the job in your cover letter, and that usually can. The job application, what's written there is I'll be honest, quite often copy and pasted. It's not necessarily like the specifics will be there, but you know, it's all about getting out and getting in front of people and actually, you know, having that interview.
Molecular evolution. And so my question is, I graduated as an undergrad in 2007, worked professionally for a while, and I'm just getting back into school now. And I know, you know, one thing that I've experienced is I'm a lot better student now. I'm a lot better researcher than I would have been when I was, you know, 24 years old. So my question is, you know, when it comes to the point of maybe applying for positions, how do, you know, students that are maybe a little older, a little wiser, kind of leverage the life skills that we've learned that we know would make us a better fit for a position in a meaningful way, I guess. You know, I'm thinking about it's kind of hard to put that on a resume, but how do you use that information in a positive way?
Mm-hmm. You know, I will say that professional maturity is a good thing, you know, and I think that that will definitely shine through the interview process, and, you know, continue to, you know, nurture your network while you are here right now. You know, that's the one piece that I find that sometimes people just kind of, you know, kind of out of sight, out of mind, and then all of a sudden when they need it, they're there. But keep nurturing that network, and I think that it's a benefit.
Mm-hmm. From a more tactical perspective, I would say make that a prominent position on your resume. So probably as a PhD student, you think that your main focus should be your research, which it should. But beyond that, don't hide your industry experience. So when, you know, you're submitting application, when the right time comes, that's very clear to the employer, because I agree with Bernadette. That is a very great advantage, I would say, for you to have, where many PhD students who have gone directly from undergrad to grad have not had an industry experience, which isn't a bad thing. It just takes a little bit more ramp up time to adapt. And you're bringing both those perspectives. So use it to your advantage.
Before closing, we have just enough time to run through the panel one more time. Could you please, in just one sentence, answer the question, what do you most want people to remember from today?
All right, well, I'll have one, and that is get out of your comfort zone. Try new things. Use your resources.
Gosh, I would say, number one, get excited. Please, really get excited. And two, you have a lot more options than you think.
Take advantage of the resources we have at the University of Minnesota.
Remember that the first stab at a career course might not be the right one, and don't be afraid to jump onto something new and exciting that really interests you.
I would build on that and say maintain your sense of curiosity and your sense of adventure. That's what life is about.
Making a choice to pursue a non-academic career after getting a PhD is in no way, shape, or form indicative of failure or a waste of time. Follow your heart and follow your passions, and do what you want to do and build the life that you want.
Thank you very much, panel.